Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to show you how to create this kind of little, I don't know, sunsetty, cloudy sky with silhouettes. The silhouette stamps I use are Lavinia stamps. I'm going to be using today some Versafine Clair in Nocturn, milled lavender, Victorian Velvet, shaded lilac, seedless preserves, and dried marigold. It's a beautiful, beautiful color combination. So, and I have a piece of paper off to the side to kind of brush off any excess ink because I don't want any harsh ink marks on my beautiful puffy sunsetty clouds. So I'm going to go in starting with some milled lavender, and I'm going to just rub off a little bit here. Make sure I have plenty of ink, but not heavy. And I'm just going to go in and just here and there make little swirling motions. So nothing terribly technical about this. It's just the beginnings of some clouds, and I'm going about 2/3 of the way down. And I'm going to go in next with my shaded lilac. Use the same brush and just brush off a little because this is rather dark. And just add some little bit darker spots here and there. Not a lot, just enough. The main thing is not to put too much pressure on your brush in this particular technique because you're trying to get your color down lightly. So I'm going to go in with my Victorian Velvet and my pink brush. I'm going to tap that off as well. And then I'm going to just start coming in again, just here and there, kind of the way a cloudy sky would look. And I'm going to go ahead and take that down all the way to the bottom. And just kind of swipe back and forth at the bottom. And then I want to go back in with my milled lavender, and I want to just soften out those harsh edges from the Victorian Velvet. And it works really well to do it like this, so just kind of going back and forth. Super easy technique, and there's just no wrong way. I mean, honestly, it's clouds. But I am going to go in with a little bit darker shade, the Seedless Preserves, and I'm going to clear that brush off quite a lot. And just the same, go in here and there with a little bit more darkness. But not like a sad or scary dark, like a brilliant dark, if that makes any sense. And I'm going to take that all the way almost down to the bottom. I'm going to come in with my dried marigold and brush off again, and I'm just going to put it in spots. Just where all the colors, all of these oxides blend beautifully. And that's that for my sky, and then I'm just going to, that's going to be the top of my hills, so I want that to be the orangey color. And what I use is just a piece of copy paper to create my little hill. But I'm going to go ahead and make a fresh one so you can see how they're made. And you're basically just going to tear the paper in kind of a hill shape. It's nothing, no rocket science here, just tear the paper. I'm going to lay it down just a little beyond that darkened orange part. I'm going to grab my orange brush again, and I'm going to go in with the dried marigold, and I'm just going to swipe down to darken out that area. Just simple little swipes. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not really the focal point of the picture, but you know, I mean, you want it to look separate from the sky somewhat. Now, nonetheless, the sky is going to be kind of reflecting its colors onto this little hillside. So I'm adding in just some of these colors. Coming in with a little bit of Victorian Velvet and just bringing up the colors of those hills. And I'll go in with some of the Seedless Preserves, and I'm going to flip my picture over so I have more control, and I'm just going to kind of swipe up and around from the bottom, bringing that color in. And with that, pretty much done with that part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and put away my oxides. Don't need them anymore. Here we go. Just get the stuff out of the way here. And I'm gonna grab my Mini Misty stamping platform, and I'm gonna go ahead and lay my paper in, and I'm gonna make sure that it's tied up against that bottom right corner. But I'm also going to use some magnets. You see I have sticky grid in there, but it's lost its stick, so I have to rely on these magnets. I can't be asked to get more sticky grid right now. And today I'm going to be using the Rory and Darcy set from Lavinia stamps. Any silhouette stamp will work. You could even just draw something in there if you wanted to, if you know how to draw, or cut something out of a magazine. So it can be anything. It just needs to be silhouette. So it needs to be black. And I'm just going to kind of place them, and we don't know yet what they're pointing at, but they're going to be pointing at something. And I got a little goober on there, but I'm just going to leave it. And then I'm going to lift my stamps off, and I'm going to go ahead and coat them with the Versafine. I'm trying to get that little yucky thing out with the Versafine Clair in the Nocturn. Okay, making sure it's still there, tied in the corner. And by the way, little handle you see on my stamp is from Blue Night Rubber Stamps. And I only have one, and I use it exclusively for this particular ink pad. But it's very handy to kind of keep your fingers out of the ink, well, best you can. I mean, if you're me, you're probably not going to keep your fingers out of it anyway, but the idea, the idea is amazing. I'm going to lift that, and I can see that it's just not quite dark enough. So I'm going to give it one more go here. So I'm just going to coat my stamps, make sure that thing's down in the corner, and go ahead and stamp those guys down again. And this time I'm just going to use my hands and fingers because I feel like I get better centralized pressure where I need it. So I just kind of push down with my fingers and lift, and good. We're good to go on that. Happy with that. I'll just clean off my stamps here. And guys, this is such an easy technique, and it comes out so beautiful. Now, one thing I will say is that I am going to be using one of my handmade stencils that I designed. I did in my Facebook group post the PNG for it. So if you wanted to make it yourself, you could with your Cricut or Silhouette or Scan and Cut. Basically, they're fairy stars, meaning they're 7-pointed stars. So that's what just makes them different from everybody else's. So I'm going to set my image back in my stamping platform, and I'm just going to lay my magnet down for a second. I'm going to grab a piece of acetate, because next thing I want to do is put on my sentiment. And the sentiments that I'm using are red rubber, and they don't have any kind of marking, you know, on the back side. So you have to kind of practice with them if you want your stamp to go in the right place. So I've got this little sentiment stamp, and it's one of my favorites, and this is from Stampscapes. It is the Scenic Sentiment Sheets number 4, and I'm going to be using a Confucius quote here. And you can see that I've taken a pen and I've marked where the straight line is, because you can see it's not straight from where the stamp is, you know, protruding. So I wanted to kind of get an idea, because Lord knows I have gotten this thing crooked a million times thinking, you know, lining up that line, and the line doesn't line up with the text. So live and learn, use the acetate. So I'm just going to give it a quick tap with my Versafine Clair. I'm going to stamp it down there, make sure that I like the placement, and I'm good with the placement. So I'm going to take my stamp and I'm going to clean it really, 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 really well, because I'm going to be doing white heat embossing, and even though the black won't really show through the white much, you know, I don't want to take a chance. So I'm just going to clean it off really well. I'm going to clean off my piece of acetate and just remove it, and watch my magnets. They're so attracted to each other. It's Valentine's love. I'm going to grab my anti-static powder bag here. Y'all remind me to get a new one of these. I buy everything and I forget that I need a new one. And I've got my Versamark ink, my Versamark sticky ink. And I'm going to go ahead, and I did not, notice I didn't remove the mouse pad from this. I didn't really feel like it's necessary because I'm not pressing extremely hard or anything. I'm just going light, but I do like to go twice. And you can see and make sure that, you know, everything's covered. And I check it and I can see that it's all covered. So I'm going to go ahead and coat that in some white opaque superfine embossing powder. Is it Wow? Yeah, it's Wow. And I've got my heat tool heating up on the side, by the way. The magic of no noise because editing. Just going to give that a little, and I'm happy with the way it is. It's just perfect. So I'm going to just move this stuff kind of out of my way entirely, because I'm known to also have accidents with my stuff I don't put away. So get the lid on, and again, my heat tool is still heating over to the side. I'm going to pick this up and lay it down here in the center, and doesn't matter where you lay it really. And I'm going to go ahead and just take the heat tool back and forth until the sentiment is fully embossed. These are great sentiments. I'm kind of a person that likes, you know, different stuff. The usual suspect for cards isn't my bag. I like the unusual. So unusual, out of ordinary, whatever. And then I'm just going to take this little stencil brush that I use for cleaning, and I'm just going to clean off all that anti-static powder. And I'm going to go ahead and do my trimming now, because I'm going to trim this down to the size that I want it, which is going to be 5 1/4 by 4. Because it's going to, you know, have a little bit of a border around it on the card base. So I'm doing my best to get it as even as I possibly can. Get those pieces out of my way. And the next thing I'm doing, and I'll tell you why I'm doing it, I am going to be using this Distress Glaze only around the cloudy parts. And the reason for that is that I'm going to be using some texture paste, and it's white texture paste for my stars, and I really do not want that white, any of my oxide inks to bleed through because it's wet, right? I want my stars to stay white. So what I'm doing is I'm both protecting the oxide surface and protecting my embossing or my texture paste from grabbing any of that color. So I'm trying very carefully to avoid the stamped part because they will smear. Even though that stuff's supposed to be waterproof, this stuff will smear it. How do I know? Don't ask. I can just tell you from experience. So I know approximately where I'm going to be putting my stars. So you just rub that on and then you buff it off with a paper towel. And that will protect that oxide surface. And you want to look at it really closely and make sure it's well buffed off because you don't want any globbery areas there. And see, I just smudged that little hat a little bit. That's okay. Not a huge deal. I'm not mad. Okay, so now that I've got that surface protected, I can go in with my stencil. And this one I have cut in half because it's just easier to manipulate. And I'm going to move the stars, because you can see through the stencil. I'm going to move the stars so that Rory and Darcy are actually pointing at one of them. And I'm not going to tape this down or anything. I'm just going to grab my texture paste, and this is a matte distress texture paste. It's just matte white. And it's getting old and thick. I'll have to replace it pretty soon. And you see, I'm not going to put stars over Rory or Darcy, so I'm going to try and avoid that area. And it's not hard to do with this stuff. I mean, it's white. You can see it. And I'm just going to spread that texture paste down on there. And again, I'm not taping it down. My silicone mat kind of helps hold it. And, you know, I've got enough off to the sides to be able to kind of hang on to it. So you can see I'm avoiding that star around Rory's, or I guess that's Darcy's hat, and getting all the stars in between. I'm just going to rub that texture paste on there and fill in all the rest of the stars. And then I will, I give this 15-20 minutes to dry before I start messing with it again. And it may not be 100% dry. If for 100% dry, you want to wait, you know, a couple hours. But just to like glue it onto a card base and stuff, it doesn't need to be dry through and through, just dry to the touch. And making sure I get that tiny star between them. And that's the only thing, is if you're holding down your stencil, you only have one hand to work with, so better make it a good one. Okay. Looks good. Make sure I got these two pretty filled in. And I'm going to go ahead and lift my stencil off, and there you can see my little stars. And that's how she's going to look. I went ahead and mounted this onto a pink card base and took a picture of it, and I did a little bit of shading there in the hills, but that's it. Easy to do. I want to thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and please consider subscribing. Have a great day.